Okay, hello everyone. Hope you guys are all still doing okay. Today we're actually going to start our very last unit of the semester, and it's going to be solving quadratic equations. So in Unit 9, which is the last unit, we did graphing quadratic equations. We did that in standard form, intercept form, and vertex form. And now we're going to start see how we can solve those equations. Now, I will say that this is probably the most important unit of the semester. You'll see this a lot, especially in Algebra 2 and a little bit of it in geometry as well. So again, do make sure you're taking notes and following along. And of course, let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so let's go ahead and kind of get into how we can solve quadratic equations. And there's actually many different methods to solving these. Many different methods. So let me just go ahead and list them all, and then we'll go from there. So the first one that we'll do today, but one that you've actually already done, is by factoring. Okay, so we did a whole unit on factoring when we did polynomials. So that's the first technique, is solving by factoring. And then we'll do solving by graphing. We actually did this as well when we did absolute value equations. We did solving by graphing. So we'll probably look at that next time. So we have solving by factoring, solving by graphing, and then what's going to be called solving by undoing. And then we have solving by completing the square, okay, which you will know for a little bit. And then finally, we have solving by what's called the quadratic formula. Okay, so we have a grand total of 5 different methods to solving quadratics. And I don't know if we're going to get to all of these before the end of the semester. I'm hoping to, but a couple of these will definitely show up again and again over the next couple of years for you guys during geometry and Algebra 2. Okay, but we are going to start with solving by factoring. But again, you guys have already done this before, so it'll hopefully be a review for you guys. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at some examples. Okay, so solving by factoring, which is the first method that we'll do. Okay, so if I have a squared plus 6a minus 27 equals 0, right? So whenever you're solving by factoring, the trick is always set one side equal to 0. So I'll write that down, set one side equal to 0. And then using the zero product property. Okay, so since we're solving quadratic equations, our exponent will always be squared. That's always going to be our degree. Otherwise, we wouldn't be solving a quadratic. Okay, so let's see, how can we factor this? Well, so we want two numbers that add up to 6, multiplied to negative 27, right? Adding up to b, multiplied to c. And the right side is already equal to 0, so there's nothing to be done. We can just go to the factoring. And what are my two numbers? So adding up to 6, multiplied to negative 27, I think it'll be plus 9 and minus 3. And then part 2, using the zero product property, we can just set each factor equal to 0. Okay, and then solve for a, so we get a equals negative 9, or add 3 here, a equals 3. Okay, again, like I said, we did do this already, so hopefully it's not completely new for you guys. Okay, moving along, p squared minus 100 equals 0. Again, I already have equals 0, so I like that. And now I want two numbers that add up to 0 and times to negative 100, right? Adding up to 0 because I don't have a p term, so I have a plus 0p. And let's go ahead and set it up. What are my two numbers? I think in this case it will be plus 10 and minus 10, right? This is a difference of two squares. And then again, using the zero product property, subtract 10 here, I get negative 10. Or if I add 10 here, I get p equals positive 10. All right, good. Okay, and so now let's look at one over here where my leading coefficient is no longer 1. So now it's 5m squared. Again, I do have equal to 0, so I do like that. But now, right, so now if we try to factor, we still want two numbers that add up to the middle term. So that's negative 6. But then we're going to multiply to a times c. So that will be negative 40. Okay, so very important. It's not just negative 8. It's going to be negative 8 times 5 in this case. And then remember how this goes. The way we did factoring when the leading coefficient is not 1 is we're first going to write it as 5m, right? Because it's 5m squared. Okay, so let's find our two numbers. Add up to negative 6 times negative 40. I think it's minus 10 and plus 4. Yep, that looks good. Okay, and remember that's only our first step. Okay, there isn't second step when the leading coefficient is not 1. But that is just to divide out any common factors. Okay, so the first term, the first factor, I can divide it by 5. So I'm dividing by 5. And then 5m plus 4, I really can't do anything with that. Okay, so this right here is how we can factor 5m squared minus 6n minus 8. Okay, and now again, let's go ahead and go back to the zero product property. So here I get m equals 2, or 5m plus 4 equals 0, minus 4, and then divided by 5. So I get m equals 2, or m equals negative 4/5. All right, there it is. Okay, and then just a couple more just to kind of do a review of all types of these by factoring. Okay, so now I don't have a 0, right? Both sides have terms, have non-zero terms. So then what I want to do is make one side equal to 0. Now in this case, we can do either side, but because we have the positive 4m squared on this side, I'm going to move everything to that side. So I'm going to subtract 40 and add 5m to both sides. Okay, so I'm going to get a 0 on the right, which I like. And then I'm going to have 4m squared. And then I have minus 17m plus 5m. So that looks like minus 12m. And then minus 40 equals 0. Okay, so now these look like numbers that are much bigger than the ones we did for the first couple. Okay, but we're still going to try to factor. And remember, when we factor, the first step is always to look for the GCF. So look for GCF. Okay, for the ones we did before, there was no GCF, right? Like a squared plus 6a minus 27, no GCF. P squared minus 100, no GCF. And then here, 5, 6, and 8, there's no GCF there either. Okay, but here we do have one. Look for GCF. And I think our GCF between 4, 12, and 40, I think is 4. So let's go ahead and take that out first. I'm left with m squared minus 3m minus 10 equal to 0. Okay, and the reason we do this is it's going to make our next steps much easier. Okay, so now I can factor what's on the inside. So we want two numbers that add up to negative 3, multiply to negative 10. And let's go ahead and set it up. Okay, what are my two numbers? Minus 5 and plus 2. And then again, let's go ahead and use a zero product property. Let's set m minus 5 equal to 0. I get m equals 5, or m plus 2 equals 0. So I get m equals negative 2. Right? And again, in case you're wondering, why do we now worry about the 4? Well, if we set 4 equal to 0, that doesn't make sense, right? So this we actually don't need to write. So 4 equals 0. We don't get a solution from there. That wouldn't make sense to make 4 equal to 0. But these two are solutions, right? Those have m's. So I get m equals 5 or negative 2. Okay. And then last one, again, same deal. I don't have a 0. So let's go ahead and set one side equal to 0. I have a x squared here and a negative x squared here. Okay, so what I'm going to do again is I'm going to move it to the left side. Okay, and the reason for that is when I do that, I'm going to get a positive 2x squared here. Okay, it's much easier to factor when you have a positive leading coefficient. Okay, if I chose to move x squared over here, I will need to subtract x squared on both sides, and then I will end up with a negative 2x squared on the right. So that I don't want. So let me undo that. Okay, so plus x squared, and of course minus 5x on both sides as well. So then I get 2x squared minus 11x plus 12 equals 0. Okay, time to factor, but again, look for GCF. Here, I don't think we have one. 2, 11, and 12, we can't really take anything out. So let's go ahead and factor. Adding up to negative 11, multiply to positive 24, right, against 2 times 12. So then let's go ahead and set it up. So it's 2x squared. I'm going to have 2x and 2x. What are my two numbers? I think I have negative 3 and negative 8. Okay, but again, that's only our first step. 2x minus 3, can't really simplify that. 2x minus 8 divided by 2. I get x minus 4. And now I can use the zero product property, plus 3. And then divided by 2, I get x equals 3 halves. Or x minus 4 equals 0. I get x equals 4. So 3 halves and 4. Okay, so that is pretty much it in terms of solving by factoring, which is our again our first method of solving quadratic equations. Again, hopefully there was nothing new, but a good review of something we did 2 units ago when we did polynomials. And hopefully factoring is still something that's fresh in your minds. Again, this unit is probably the most important of this second semester. So please go ahead and make sure you're taking notes and make sure you try the homework. And then, of course, let me know if you have any questions. And then next time, we're going to see the other methods, solving by graphing. But other than that, hope you guys have a great rest of your day.